Welcome back to this week's AMT Fresh Produce Market Overview. Potatoes made a slight comeback while onions lost ground. Tomatoes surprised with a sharp climb in prices, but carrots are still struggling at the moment. Peppers spiked again, cabbages remain under severe pressure, and pumpkins are holding at unusually high levels at the moment. On the fruit side, we're seeing some big shifts in bananas, avocados and oranges, while red onions and blueberries are stealing the spotlight at the moment. Demand gave markets a boost last week, but the real question is, can it last? This episode is proudly brought to you by Villa Crop Protection. Please do me a small favor and subscribe to our channel. It will help us a lot to improve the content and info in this video each week. Potato prices jumped by about 10% to R40.83 per 10 kg, but is still down 53% from last year. Weekly volumes were up by 7% and remained about 24% higher year on year. Extra large potatoes traded sideways at 46, large at 45, mediums at 40 and smalls now at 25 rand. Mondials increased slightly to 42 rand while Sephiras jumped to 47 rand per 10 kg. Demand definitely improved on the markets over the past week with the start of the new month, which supported prices despite the higher volumes also reported. If demand drops again towards the middle of the month, we expect prices to remain under pressure due to high volumes coming out of the northern production areas especially. For this week, however, we expect prices to remain sideways with demand that can stay higher for now. Volumes can drop slightly this week with Christiana and Douglas areas finishing up now and not a lot of Limpopo farmers starting up this week. However, massive volumes expected in October and November from Limpopo will put this market under severe pressure by then. Onion prices dropped by 3% to R49.39 per 10 kg, which is almost 10% lower year on year. Volumes increased by 6% last week and is now 11% higher year on year. Large onions traded at 51 rand, mediums at 55 and extra large at 47 rand, while small onions stayed on a lower level of 32 rand per 10 kg. Brown onions averaged on 45 rand, white onions on 48, while red onion prices increased sharply to 142 rand per 10 kg last week. Red onion volumes are under severe pressure and is keeping this price on elevated levels for now. We are still expecting prices, or onion prices at least, to remain in a downward trend towards the end of this year due to higher supply levels expected. Exports are also on its lowest levels, usually from September to November each year, which can also keep prices on this lower level for now. Low demand towards the middle of the month, which can be towards the next week, can also drive prices lower. Tomato prices increased over the past week to R7.13 per kilogram, up 14% week on week, while volumes stayed on a similar level. The average price is about 46% lower, while volumes are 40% higher year on year. Large tomatoes traded at R7.69, extra large at R8.54 and mediums on R7.48. Based on the forecast, we are again expecting lower prices towards the middle of the month when demand is likely to decrease and supply that can remain on a higher level, especially considering the extremely warm weather that we're experiencing at the moment for this time of the year. More volumes now can, however, create a shortage later in the year, so just keep that in mind as well. Carrot prices stayed on a lower level last week and traded on R4.20 per kilogram, about 0.4% lower the past week and 5% lower year on year. Volumes are, however, still 1% lower than a year ago, despite the jump that we saw over the last 2 weeks. Large carrots traded lower on R4.44, while mediums increased to R3.56 and smalls on an extremely low level of R1.64 per kilogram. Carrot prices will struggle to keep up over the next 2 to 3 months due to higher volumes that will put a lot of pressure on this price over this period. This video is proudly sponsored by Villa. With world-class solutions like Masterlock tailored for South African conditions, Villa helps you manage risk and increase productivity with research-backed confidence. Pepper prices jumped by more than 10% to R25.24 per kilogram, with green peppers now on R19.74, yellow peppers at R36.47 and red peppers 46% higher on R36.01. I still think that prices can come down when demand fades towards the middle of the month. If we remain on a similar trend as the past 3 years, we can expect prices to trade sharply lower from September until November, when volumes usually start to pick up. The cabbage market remains under severe pressure, with prices 10% lower to R188 per kilogram over the past week, which is now 50% lower year on year. The expectation is that this price will remain under pressure over the next 2 months as well. Sweet potatoes decreased by 22% to R4.12 and is now 45% lower year on year due to 126% more volumes reported compared to a year ago. Spinach decreased to R2.63 and is also likely to stay on a lower level until October due to higher volumes. The average butternut price increased to R9.99 and is very scarce at the moment, which can keep prices elevated over the next few weeks. Pumpkin prices also jumped to R6.47 and is now 180% higher year on year due to 36% lower volumes reported. Pumpkins can stay on a higher price level until October and possibly start to decrease in November again, when we expect more volumes. Garlic increased to R75.55, with the local garlic at R73.63 and imported garlic now on R76.12 per kilogram. Visit aimtrends.co.za for our latest reports, detailed charts and free downloadables. You can also click on the like button if you enjoy this content. You can also follow and subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook channels. In the fruit market, banana prices increased by about 4% to R8.05 per kilogram last week and is now 4% lower year on year. We're still on a similar price trend than last year, when we saw prices shooting up from this point towards the end of the year. The forecast, however, indicates that prices will peak around October, but it still looks like better prices over the next 2 months at least. The apple price traded 0.6% higher on R11.65, which is now 8% higher compared to a year ago. Pears, however, decreased by 2% last week to R9.32 per kilogram, about 9% lower year on year. Orange prices increased by 6% to R5.26 and is still about 13% below last year's price levels, with local volumes up 50% year on year. From September to November, we usually expect prices to increase as volumes start to decrease, but we can see prices remaining on a lower level for longer this year due to these extremely high volumes locally. Avocados increased to R21.02 per kilogram and is about 1% higher compared to a year ago. Fiates traded at R30, Haas on 17 and Pinkertons around R20 per kilogram. We expect avos to remain in the slight upward trend towards the end of the year and then spike in January and February next year, when volumes are usually on its lowest level. Grapes traded significantly lower on R49.44 per kilogram due to higher volumes. Pineapples increased to R10.12. Lemons also jumped to R5.82, while blueberries also traded lower on R94.16 per kilogram. This episode was proudly brought to you by Villa Crop Protection. For more detailed insights and forecasts, visit aimtrends.co.za now. I'm Dr. Johnny van der Merwe. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week.